And welcome back into this another special edition of Twins Takes, recorded just after the Twins losing in walk-off fashion for a second straight day to the Mariners. My name is Troy. I'm joined alongside Twins Central, Twins Insider, and FalveysMattress. Depressing game, depressing series, kind of in my eyes. But how are you guys feeling today?
Yeah, that was an annoying game to lose. It feels like the losses to the Mariners, especially in Seattle, are always kind of like that. Today, you get down 6 runs, bat all the way back, including a big swing by Keishel in the 9th inning. But it felt like after Bell and Clemens didn't come through in the top half, the walk-off was kind of inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a frustrating loss, frustrating series, as you guys said, but it's been fun to see the late game bats come alive, and you really feel like this team's never out of a game. So that's a positive I'll take away from it.
Yeah, I'm still excited that the team is evidently buying, and they've made some moves, and we'll talk about that. And they need to make some more moves, but it's still I thought the season would be over at this point if you would have asked me before the year. So we should have some fun, meaningful baseball in August, and you can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, you really can. And even though it seems like multiple times this year, the Twins have been down on their luck in these rough patches, and then they bounce back. So I don't doubt that they can bounce back after 2 pretty annoying losses on the road in Seattle. But let's get right into the news.
Breaking news.
Well, I got some bad news for you.
Extra.
Good news, everyone.
It's time for the news.
And a couple of debuts were made down at Fort Myers for this incoming 2026 Twins draft class, including the 3rd overall pick in the draft, Von Lackey. And he had a couple of really standout moments, I think, just seeing the clips on social media from the Mighty Muscles. Threw out a couple of guys from behind the plate. He stole a couple of bags. I believe he was only 2 for 13 this weekend, but overall you saw the tools that he brings to the table this weekend.
Yeah, it's good to see him debut. I saw he threw out a base runner last night, which was good to see. The Twins have struggled with that, obviously, at the major league level. But right now he's at Fort Myers. I imagine he plays maybe one more week there before he goes up to Cedar Rapids. It sounds like that's the plan. So he'll be interesting to follow along with the rest of the prospects that debuted over this last week.
Yeah, and another guy that debuted down at low A was the 2nd-round pick, Carson Tinney, another catcher that the Twins drafted. Really powerful bat. Walked a couple of times. He hit a ball at 114 miles an hour today, just earlier this morning, which was the hardest hit ball ever by a Mighty Muscles player ever. So a really impressive feat by the Twins' 2nd-round pick. I know a couple of other guys made some decent impressions. Turner, a later-round draft pick, had a couple of big hits down at low A. So the Twins' draft class starting to make a little bit of impact here and there. But other news with the additions of AJ Minter and Dean Kremer this week, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Zebby Matthews was sent down. Jack Anderson was also sent down to AAA. Zebby struck out 10 guys in a start on Friday night. And Cody Larson was also DFA'd. So some shuffling around there with the pitching staff, as we'll dive into AJ Minter and Dean Kremer soon enough. But then more frustrating news on the Emanuel Rodriguez front. Unfortunately, his thumb got jammed while on his rehab assignment in A-ball. So once again, it seems like there's another setback for a guy that just can never seem to get lucky with the injury.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter earlier today that he had been scratched, and I was refreshing Twitter like crazy, seeing if a trade might have happened. But nope, it's probably the worst news possible that thumb is still acting up for him. So that's really tough to see.
Yeah, I hate the injury prone label in any sport, but especially baseball. It's not like a contact sport like football, but at some point, I mean, he's had the same body part keep getting injured, and it's getting to a scary place with him. I mean, he literally doesn't play games. I'm low on this guy. It's a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm kind of just over Emanuel Rodriguez. Like, not that he can help it. He's obviously not trying to get injured, although this injury was a little different. We talked about it. Diving into first base was stupid, but this is a guy that's going to be out of options this year. Aaron Gleeman on Gleeman and the Geek said that he reached out to a Twins official, asked about getting that extra option year because he's been hurt so often. The Twins official said he's not in line to get that extra option year. This is a guy that hasn't debuted yet. He's injured time after time, and he's going to be out of options next year. So his back is kind of against the wall. They're obviously going to give him a chance if they don't trade him, but I'm just kind of over the whole thing personally. Like his prospect stock has fallen, not because he hasn't performed, but just because he hasn't played baseball.
Yeah, he fell down a bunch of spots. I believe he just was completely taken out of the top 100 on Baseball America. Still a really highly touted prospect, but again, just the availability is the most important thing. He just hasn't played enough. But that's going to go into our main topics. Of course, the trade deadline is tomorrow at about 6 o'clock Eastern time, I believe. So the Twins have already made a couple of moves. The first one being AJ Minter, the left-hander from the Mets, being acquired just a couple of days ago before the Mariners series. For first baseman Bill Yamick, a former second-round pick, and Bruin Agbayani, an infielder who was drafted in the 6th round of last year's draft. And AJ Minter is a guy that's kind of been on my radar personally for the Twins. He hasn't gotten a lot of whiffs as he has and strikeouts as he just has in the past. But, for a lefty option in the pen, I think we can all agree that he's at least an upgrade. He's probably an upgrade. He's most likely an upgrade over Rogers. And it's just, he kind of fills that Bondo role that the Twins have been missing for over the last few months, ever since Bondo went down.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's got an inning and a third with the Twins so far. He's got a 0 ERA. So that's really good. What I like about him is he adds life to that bullpen. And, you can make the argument that Cody Funderburk has been very, very good lately as a lefty, but Minter brings the experience. He's a good postseason pitcher in his time. So I like the trade a lot just to add length to our bullpen.
Yeah, I would have been really excited. I was really excited on Friday when I said, oh, now we have Minter and Nance. And those are a good 3 and 4 because we have Gomez and Morris. They did, of course, both get walked off, but they're still pretty solid. And honestly, I think as we've all kind of agreed, the bullpen really is not the thing that makes me uncomfortable with this team anymore. They could still use more relievers. You can always use more relievers, but there's a lot bigger issues, actually.
Yeah, and touching on the offense, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but the offense has been a bit more of a weaker point since the All-Star break started. And as July ended, the Twins had one of the best ERAs in baseball in terms of the bullpen at a 2.68, I believe. So the Twins' bullpen really just wasn't an issue all month long, really because of Morris continuing to be consistent. But the Twins' bullpen just hasn't really given you a lot of stress. There's been a couple moments, but, they haven't had a big blow-up game in a while, it feels like. And another acquisition the Twins made was for starting pitcher Dean Kremer from the Baltimore Orioles. You guys can talk about what you like about him. I'll say my piece later on because what I said was pretty controversial when the trade was made, but it just seemed like, the Twins get a starting pitcher, and at least the positive side of things, he's going to give you innings.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about him is that from 2021 to 2025, he's been a pretty good pitcher. He is consistently a 4.1 ERA guy. Look, is that amazing? No, but this is a rotation that's out of depth. That's a lower ERA than Zebby Matthews, who got sent down for him. That's a lower ERA than Connor Prelip, who has been encouraging, but it's not as good as he has. People are really up in arms about this trade, because they traded a guy that 95% of them didn't know before the trade happened, and then everybody decided, is amazing after the trade happened. And second of all, because he's come back from injury this year, and his last few starts before he was traded weren't pretty. He allowed 8 runs his last time out, allowed 6 before that. So that really ballooned his ERA. If he was traded, before those 2 starts happened, he would have been traded with, numbers that lined up with the rest of his career. Is this, a sexy pickup? No, but it's not nearly as bad as I've seen a lot of people make it out to be on Twitter.
Yeah, and I mean, especially, Prelip's going to be shut down here soon. He's at above his, career innings pitch. So we got to take care of his arms. Zebby's been wishy-washy. I'm sure we'll see him back up in a short period of time, probably back in the bullpen. Sounds like per the broadcast. But I just like Kremer as a floor raiser. I know, Twin Central, you've touched on that on your personal Twitter account, but he raises the floor. He's going to give us a chance to win most games he starts. We know what we're going to get with him. It's a boring pickup, but he's going to go out there and he's going to give us 5 or 6 innings, 3 or 4 runs allowed, and give our offense a chance to win the game for him.
Yeah, that's really well said. And Central kind of touched on it, but Prelip is going to have to stop pitching at some point. Ober, I mean, he's throwing 85 now. That at some point, that's going to just either injury-wise or just results-wise, that's going to stop working completely. Ryan has his kind of mystery arm fatigue struggles. I mean, so really, almost the entire rotation is running on fumes in some way or another, and they really don't have any other, except for Rojas. They basically don't have other starters left. So, literally, just to get through the season at all, you need this pitcher, or you need a pitcher
Well,
like this.
And like before the trade happened, like if somebody that was in the rotation were to get hurt, the options to replace them at AAA would have been, like a John Klein type or a Ryan Gallagher, who neither of those guys I don't think are real encouraging. Even if you're not a good team, they needed an arm, like you said, to get through the rest of the season. Kremer does have another year of team control remaining. I'm not convinced that that's going to be picked up. He's going to be in line for probably $7-8 million of arbitration if he comes in and has 7 or 8 mediocre starts. I think he's probably getting non-tendered, but we'll worry about that when that happens, I guess. But regardless of the position the Twins were in, they simply needed another starter. They gave up a somewhat interesting prospect, but look, it's an 18-year-old that was good at rookie ball. Go look at the players that have been good at rookie ball. There's basically no correlation to them being good major league players.
Yeah,
you can go, Troy. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't disagree that Kremer can give you innings. It's just the results this year have not been ideal. Although I will say he's a guy that will give you strikeouts. He's had about a 9.5 K per 9 this year so far, and he's a guy that's reliably can get you 5 to 6 strikeouts a game in the past. So like I really hated the move initially when it happened because it just didn't feel like great. It didn't feel like especially it was just bad timing to me. I mean, I watched that last start he had against the Tigers, and he was just getting pounded in that start. Now it's one start, obviously, and and there's no reason that you can easily have a bounce back. He can be fixed with the Twins. The Twins have had done a good job with these kinds of pitchers in the past. So Dean Kremer can be good. It's just a matter of how good is he going to be? Is he going to be as bad as Sim was, or is he going to be more like in between closer to what Zebby's been, or even better than Zebby? I think that's how I'm judging it. But I don't doubt that he can be fine if he is around that 4.50 ERA, which is his expecting ERA right now according to Baseball Savant. That's a perfectly fine pitcher, and it's a perfectly fine 5-starter, especially, which the Twins have really struggled with, especially since when Sim struggled at the beginning of the year. It was just kind of a big step back for this rotation. So if you can get Dean Kremer from, say, 2022, where he was really good, or even last year, it's a solid pitcher, and I like the move. But it was a bit enraging in the moment, at least in my eyes, when you traded for him and you look at his last start. Recency bias obviously comes into play with that, but it was a little infuriating to me. But I think it's grown on me a little bit.
I think Troy's criticism is completely valid. Like, it's just not an impressive move, which is totally fair. But I think I want to touch on what Central said earlier. Literally, if you had asked like 98% of the fan base on Thursday about this guy Reyes, they would have said who. And then just the process of trading an 18-year-old who had a good 2 months of rookie ball for a proven, decent MLB player. If you do that every time with every rookie ball player, you'll probably win the trade 95% of the time. So I saw a lot of people who acted like we traded Walker Jenkins. And I just
I do think the risk is when you make a trade like this, when you lose the trade, it looks ugly because the player becomes really good. I mean, you think of the Tatis trade, that's the either worst or best example of it,
or Luis Seal
how you want to view it.
For Jake Cave, I think,
or Caminero from Myers.
Yeah, it happens every so often, once or twice a year, maybe.
Yeah. Right, but that's looking at one trade. Think of how there's going to be 20 trades like this made between now and tomorrow night, where 5 years from now we'll be pointing back at one of them. Could it be this one? Absolutely, but let's worry about that in 2030 when it happens.
The question is if it might age well or badly, but we don't know that yet. So can Kremer be fine? I'm kind of going to the idea of he can be serviceable. And if he's just serviceable, it's probably a big boost to this rotation, especially if he averages about 6 innings a start. And as a 5th starter, that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, well, and the other thing I want to say before we move on to this, we've already spent a lot of time talking about an 18-year-old. If the Orioles managed to turn Reyes into a good player, there's no guarantee that's what he would have became with the Twins. There's a long road of development ahead of him. like it's no guarantee that if he would have stayed in the Twins organization, he turns into the same thing that he is with the Orioles.
No, it's exactly like Heel. Like Heel could have been a decent pitcher with the Twins, and by the way, Heel had that one decent year and has stunk since then. But it's like, yeah,
He's
you don't
obviously
know if the development is going to happen. It's not the Twins' development at this point. He's just a ball of clay. That's all he is.
Yeah, he's a shining piece that, could be something, but you're not. You can sell it off now because, you're not sure if it can really get better than what it is right now. But going into trade pieces that we want the Twins to make. So the Twins have lost their last 2 games, so they're now about a game back of the wild card spot, a couple games back for the White Sox, around about a half game behind the Indians right now. But what are some of your guys' main targets going into going into tomorrow? So what's the biggest position of need that the Twins need? Right now, I'm thinking that the Twins need another right-handed hitting outfielder. They need somebody at least to give them a boost to their lineup. But I'll let you guys speak first.
I still think, I know they've addressed it with Minter and with Nance a few weeks ago. Like, those are moves kind of like Kremer. They improve the floor of the team, but I still think they need a reliever that's better than Yoendrys Gomez. Like, I don't think he's great, but he's gotten the job done. So somebody better than Gomez, but worse or on par with Andrew Morris, who's been really freaking good over the last month. To be fair to Morris, like, I think a reliever that you absolutely trust in the 8th or 9th inning would do the most for them. I could be talked into an outfielder, but if you hold on to Larnach, if you hold on to Roden, and you assume Buxton is healthy within the next few weeks, I think they could be fine without an outfielder. Now, say they trade Larnach, then they absolutely do need an outfielder. Even if they, are going to call up Walker Jenkins or somebody like that, there's no guarantee that he's going to be good immediately. They were linked to an outfielder earlier today. A Dodgers writer, we can talk about this a little bit later, said the Twins are a team in on right-handed hitter Alex Call. He plays the corner outfield, I believe, absolutely mashes lefties. Not much of a player against right-handed pitchers.
Yeah, those are all good points, and we'll get into the Call thing. But I just want to point out, Central used the phrase reliever better than Yoendrys Gomez, and I totally agree with that because I have his splits pulled up here. He has about a 500 OPS against righties, but he has a well over 700 OPS against lefties. He really, we were talking about this off mic as the walk-off was happening. He is really more of a specialist reliever. He's a righty guy. You need another reliever, left or right-handed, who can actually get like both hands out. So you do need one more reliever. But at that point, the bullpen will be fine. It'll be what it'll be. What you really need, the things you really need are a good starting pitcher and a good shortstop. Now, the problem is those are not going to be traded for because they're not trading multiple top hundreds, which is what you need to get these. But that's what you need. If you really want to be legitimately good, that's what you need.
Well, and the other thing also, like, if you're talking about a shortstop, you're talking like a Jeremy Pena type or like a Zach Neto type. You're not talking, about getting Isaiah Kiner Falefa or something
like game changing, like team altering,
right? Or like a CJ Abrams. To be able to trade for one of those guys, you have to be able to put the best offer on the table. While the Twins, farm system is really good, it's mainly Walker Jenkins and Von Lackey who are, the headline of it at this point. I don't think they're going to trade either of those guys. And I don't know that, say the Nationals put Abrams on the table. I don't know that, you're beating the other offers with Kalen Culpepper, who's a really good prospect, headlining a deal. I just think that other teams out there will be able to beat that. So even if the Twins want to trade for a name like that, I don't know that they're capable of doing so.
Listen, I mean, we've got a top 5 farm system in baseball. I think you can confidently say that Walker Jenkins is untouchable, but with the surgence of Merrick Houston at AA, I think Kalen Culpepper is very available. You've got Eduardo Tait, who some teams might take a liking to, and he's got big power and high A. A name that comes up to me, and I know you guys said we're not going to go for it, but Otto Lopez with the Marlins looks really, really good. He's got an 833 OPS this year.
He's great.
Would change the complexion of the team.
He's under team control through 2029. I mean, he adds thump to our lineup. And, we were talking about this when we were watching the game. We were going to start our podcast, but we decided to watch when Keishel tied it up. I had said after the top of the 9th where we failed to score that we're going to get walked off here. And Gomez will get walked off and Morris will have been walked off the day before. And we're solely going to focus on bullpen additions. But I'm just pulling up some stats here. I mean, our offense, it's not sustainable. It hasn't been sustainable all year. We're the leading team with BABIP with risk this year with a 324. That's going to come down to earth. Our offense is going to regress. It has been regressing. If we want to be good, we need to add thump, preferably from the right side of the plate for me.
Yeah, even with Lewis has definitely heated up, and we'll talk about that, but you still need that because Buxton will be out for a while still.
Yeah, and I think, just my preferred need, I mentioned that we need a corner outfielder, a right-handed hitter corner outfielder specifically, is something that they need. Alex Call would be fine. But then you have Tyrone Taylor on the block. And Tyrone Taylor has been one of the more consistent fourth outfielders in baseball for the last few years. He was really solid in Milwaukee. He's been really solid in New York with the Mets. And he's on one of the hottest streaks of his career right now. He's hit, I believe, about 5 or 6 home runs in the last few weeks or so. So he's already having like one of his best seasons as a Met in general. So with the Mets going on this fire sale, they already traded Freddie Peralta earlier today. Go get somebody like a Taylor. He's not, again, might not be a sexy move, but he's 30. He's 32. Again, has the pop. OPS is at 794, 116 OPS plus. So really solid. It's a really solid outfielder, and also just buying when the iron's hot. When he's on this hot streak, that's when you take advantage. Now, you already made a move with the Mets, but I don't think it's going to stop the Mets from wanting to trade again with the Twins. And, it's a guy that's going to help you as a fourth outfielder with or without Buxton. And he's going to be really good. He's going to be really good in the middle of the order against lefties. So this is ideally a guy that I think the Twins should target, and it shouldn't cost much. Like it didn't cost much with Minter. This is a guy that is easily realistic, I think, in my eyes, in the next 24 hours.
I like that. I like him. I've liked him for a while. I'll give a couple of names here, but first I do want to point out something because people will point this out, and they're right. You can improve the lineup without trading prospects because you have a bunch of guys in AAA. I just want to today. Walker Jenkins had a 104-mile-an-hour hit. Culpepper had a 107-mile-an-hour double. Hendry Mendez had a 106-mile-an-hour double. So you could actually use these internal. That could be your quote unquote big additions, but for whatever reason, a couple different reasons, they just are like completely opposed to this, or they have been. So until I actually see them call up one of these guys, I almost can't consider them as guys they would add because it just seemingly won't happen.
Well, I would just say, calling up rookies and expecting them to provide a major jolt to your offense. We did see Keishel do it last year in his debut, but expecting them to be anything more than, really league average hitters, I don't know, is really all that realistic. Obviously, you hope that is the case, but I wouldn't personally be comfortable counting on that. I have a different view on the offense, I guess. Like, we saw them raise the floor with the bullpen. I think if they make a hitting addition, like, I want them to get somebody that's going to raise the ceiling of it. Like, an Alex Call or a Tyrone Taylor, like, those are good players, and they do help on the edges of the team and how they look. But I think if they make a move for the offense, I want like a Taylor Ward or a Seiya Suzuki if he ends up getting traded for the Cubs, like legitimately, middle of the order hitters that are going to be in your lineup that teams are going to be scared to pitch to. I don't know that Tyrone Taylor or, Alex Call, who we talked about earlier, really changed the offense as a whole.
That was kind of my point with the shortstops. Like, they have a lot of, 100-ish OPS plus guys, which is what like Taylor would be. They have a lot of solid guys. You need someone who can hit like Buxton or Jeffers can, or almost like that.
Otto Lopez can do that.
I'm honestly not against the Seiya Suzuki thing. The Cubs are really in desperate need of pitching, just any sort of pitching. Now, who could you trade to get a Seiya Suzuki? I'm just throwing this out here. I'm just spitballing. Obviously, like, probably right now, it doesn't seem like they're going to trade Joe Ryan. But if you want to work a deal out, is Joe Ryan for Seiya Suzuki like not good for both sides in a way?
Not for this year's Twins team. They'd have.
I think the Twins would probably ask for more back than that, and at that point, I don't know that the Cubs would do it. Like, if the Twins want to do trade a major league player, that's going to require them to be like almost as active as they were last year, I think, to to make sure the major league team isn't getting worse. Like they're going to have to move a lot of pieces around. Is that something that could happen? Yes, but I just don't see that being the case. So I prefer them just to, keep Larnach, keep Jeffers, keep Joe Ryan at this point, because I don't trust them to, go out and make 5 trades between now and tomorrow to backfill those needs.
You could dangle, just again spitballing. I mean, Troy, I don't know. I don't have like the Cubs stuff in front of me, but you could dangle like a Rojas or even like a Gallagher who's been pretty good and is probably close to being debut ready. I don't think they're trading Seiya Suzuki for Ryan Gallagher, but we have some like Rojas has more value to a team who would actually be starting him, I think.
Maybe so. It's just that I think Rojas is a little bit more, still a work in progress.
Are we sure that any team is even starting Kendry Rojas though?
I don't think so right now, because I think, with the way the Twins have treated him, you have to take your time with Rojas. He's a young left-hander, and the Twins they've used him as a spot starter, they've used him as a middle reliever, a multi-innings guy, and he's been solid in either of those spots. Sometimes he's a little shaky, like he was today. He gave up that home run to Raleigh, but I think he's a little bit more of a work in progress right now. Still, the Twins are still trying to figure out how to properly use him, and then how they're going to assess him. And they're using this basically as an audition, in my eyes, to see how he fits into next year's team, because he's going to be on next year's team. So it's to me, Rojas is a guy that's just you're still waiting to see what you can do with him. But I think overall the Twins still view him highly as part of the future.
Yeah, I will say there's another name that it was speculated the Twins were interested in last year when they were dangling Joe Ryan to the Red Sox, Jarren Duran, who has not been good for the Red Sox at all, but certainly has been a really good player before. I would be interested in buying low on him. I think he's talented. So that could be interesting. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Duran's a really confusing player, because he's, he had that unbelievable season a couple of years ago, but, ever since then, it just seemed like he was an obvious regression candidate. You just didn't think it would be this bad. And especially this year, he's had some squabbles in the clubhouse with some of the Red Sox players, and he's just, from what I've heard, he's just not really the greatest person in the world. So I don't know how much you want to affect team morale with that. But yeah, he's an interesting buy low guy. It's just how people have across baseball have viewed him. It's not in a positive light. So just for, team morale sake, maybe not him as a buy low guy. I'm just not really a fan of those kinds of personalities in baseball in general. So, I'm not, if I were to buy low on somebody, it's not him.
Didn't he also accuse a Twins fan of saying something pretty nasty to him? Wasn't that
something? It was something like that earlier this year. And, I just don't, some people might not care, and that's fine. But, to me, I don't want that kind of personality in my clubhouse. Just my take. So, it's interesting to think about, but he hasn't been great this year. Red Sox fans are already, pretty much done with him at this point. And I think the same, if he's on the Twins, it would probably be a similar kind of relationship. But, I don't know that, because we haven't moved for him yet. But that's just my hunch in my eyes. But I'm not really sure personally, like how I would think in the moment, but I wouldn't I don't think I would like him as a person.
Does he play? I will say I have our positional splits pulled up. Some of our team we are 25th in WRC plus from right field. I think Duran plays more left. We're also 27th we're 25th at first base WRC plus. We're 27th in right field and shortstop. And we all know about Tristan Gray's fielding. We know about some of our outfield defense. We know about our first base defense. So, if you want to get a position, I feel like shortstop, right field, first base. And you could I guess Lewis has been better, but you could go get like a Nathaniel Lau. That wouldn't cost that much. Put Lewis somewhere else. Open up DH, put someone there. There are positions that could be improved.
Yeah, the lineup is flexible enough that I think they're really, besides catcher, they're not going to trade for a catcher, but I think any other position is really on the table, because you have Clemens who can move around. You have Keishel who can move around if you want to get a center fielder. You have Lee who can play anywhere in the infield. You have, Clemens who can play anywhere. That I
Even
don't
Lewis
think they're
now.
really limited.
Lewis plays
Right,
first,
even
second,
Lewis
and
now.
third.
Lewis can play first and third base
This is
too.
where I
Yeah.
feel like the Bell's a problem, because if you're going to do all that, you need the DH to be able to rotate it.
I agree. I think Bell's a problem, and I think, assuming they don't trade Ryan Jeffers, I don't see them carrying a third catcher on the roster, for the rest of the season. That's just not good use of their bench. We saw them pinch hit Caratini. You could certainly have somebody better on the bench than two catchers who you don't really want to use late in the game to pinch hit. I think Jeffers is going to stay. I think the Twins are probably regretting their decision to give Victor Caratini a second year on his deal, which I think, at least me, and I think the rest of you probably, we saw that back when they signed him, kind of wondering what they were doing. I wonder if one of these catcher needy teams, if, teams call for Jeffers, they'll say, no, but, we have Victor Caratini if you want to take a swing on him, if they can clear a roster spot that way and keep Alex Jackson as the backup catcher.
That wouldn't be, because Jeffers is going to catch 60% of the games anyway, if he stays. So, yeah. I mean, I would not.
Right. And you're not going to get anything good for Caratini. You're going to get, a similar return
You're
to
getting
what you got.
not
for
paying
Dean
him $10
Kremer.
million next year.
Yeah.
is what you're
Right.
getting.
Yeah.
Even to eat some of the money if you want.
You
Right,
can
yeah,
do,
we
you can do that. And it
have
seems
to
like
do
the
that.
Twins, whoever they move for, they seem like they want to add payroll. So this is they want to, sell. They're willing to take on some money. So, it wouldn't, if they do move to Caratini, that's like a really low percentage chance of it. But, if teams are calling for a catcher, if Jeffers is off the market, if somebody gets a Hunter Goodman, which it seems like the Red Sox might get him for the number one prospect in baseball, which is just an insane deal to me. It's, Caratini could be a guy, and but like at the same time, I just think that, it wouldn't make sense for the other team to do it, except just for the need of getting a catcher who might be, decent at the plate, and he's just kind of whatever behind the plate, although he's been fine with ABS challenges. So yeah, it's interesting to think about, just how many of these major league guys they can trade, and how much you could get back, and just talent that can help the roster now. It's a really intriguing 24 hours, I will say, for the Twins coming up, because, the Twins, besides 2022 and 2025, which were their most active deadlines, at least in my time as a fan, they've never really been in a position to me where like they can go. It wouldn't necessarily be the wrong decision either way to either buy or sell, right? And they've had a couple deadlines where they've just done nothing. So this is done nothing. In 2023, they didn't add really anybody. 2024 was just Trevor Richards, which was just kind of a which just kind of spat in the face of a lot of fans, especially since the Twins were around first place at the time. So it's a really interesting, next 24 hours or so for the Twins. And before we end this part, I want to touch on even more starting pitching. The biggest player I want is Dustin May, personally, but I don't know what you guys think.
Well, the biggest player I wanted Skubal. I knew we weren't going to get him, but I still wanted him. Dustin May's a good fit. I mean, if he wasn't in the division, I'd be interested in Waka. I actually still kind of want Casey Mize, but again, the division tax. I can't shake the Detmers thing, man. He's been pretty good, and you get him out of that horrible organization, he would be a stud, and he has team control. But I guess the team control makes it kind of prohibitive. But like we talked about, they have a lot of appetizing prospects. You could probably get him. It would be a rough price, but it wouldn't be like a franchise-breaking price.
Yeah, I don't know if I see them buying a starter at Detmer's level. I've been under the impression, just from reading things and kind of reading the tea leaves, if they trade for another starter, which I'm not sure they'll do, but I think they do need to do, there's enough intriguing expiring arms like a, Robbie Ray, who has name value, who's a decent pitcher, been really good in the second half of the year. Clay Holmes is another one who on the Mets, he's a good pitcher. He does have a player option next year that he's going to opt out of. So for all intents and purposes, he's expiring. There's some other ones. Shane Bieber, obviously, the Twins familiar with him. The Waka one is interesting. I think he is under team control for a little bit longer. But there's enough expiring pitchers that I think improve the team, that if they do go down the road of trading for a starter, I think it'll, be those types of names where they're giving up the, 12th best prospect in the organization rather than the, 3rd and 5th.
Gausman would fit that. Yeah.
Gausman is another name that kind of fits that mold. Because the impression that I got from his last start, which was on Saturday, was that it was his last start in Toronto. He had a pretty emotional send-off in front of the hometown fans in Toronto. And I think Gausman, if you get somebody like him, that's a really experienced third starter. And he's a guy that, can still get a lot of strikeouts. Hasn't had the best season, but, as just an experienced veteran who has playoff experience, that would be a big boost to this rotation. Given that, Bailey Ober is your 3 right now, and Kremer and Philip are your 4 and 5, basically. If you get a guy like Gausman and it won't cost much, that would be great for this team.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the team control thing. I mean, we all know what this team is. If we make the playoffs, that's fantastic, right? That'd be great. But we're building for 27, 28. So Insider said Detmers. I think he's my number 1 target. You look at the Angels rotation, Jose Soriano. He's been really good for them. He's under team control through 2028. You add a high-level starter like that with team control. You trade Joe Ryan in the offseason. I mean, you go into 2027 if there's a season with a Pablo, a Detmer/Soriano, Taj, Abel, Prelip, Kremer, Ober. Like, you've got depth there, and you can somewhat replenish the system from what would obviously sting with the Joe Ryan trade. So I really, really would love to see going for guys with control and continue building out, maybe sneaking into the playoffs this year, but building out for that 27-28 time frame.
Tom Pohlad did say he's a go big or go home guy. So me and Will are talking about do something that's actually really changes the trajectory of your team in a positive way.
Yeah, I'm thinking if you get a Soriano, he was scratched from his start recently, so he's on the market. It's just that this deadline has just been really slow. It's one of the slowest deadlines I've remembered in a long time. Even though Skubal was traded last night, people have been really starving for just any sort of trades, and so Skubal has kind of filled that appetite. But you want another big move coming in. And, Garcia was traded earlier today to the Yankees for a pretty respectable haul for a first baseman like him. So Detmers and Soriano are probably the next domino to fall, or Dustin May. And, I think the Twins are probably at this moment actively making calls and actively trying to, go after some of these big fish. Maybe they won't get them, but I think I appreciate that they are at least trying and they have, the prospects on the table to do so. I think that's just one thing that a lot of non-Twins fans don't understand is that, they're with just the way this new front office and new ownership is acted, not really new ownership, but just a new general owner, they're ambitious. And, it would kind of be disappointing if they don't get somebody like a Detmers. It wouldn't be completely disappointing, but, that's just kind of what their mold is for a big move. And so I'm believing that they're going to try to do it. They'll have offers on the table. And they didn't seem afraid to trade Larnach for Abreu, which apparently was a false report, but that did make a lot of sense to me, even though I'm kind of in the not trade Larnach camp right now. They're not afraid to move guys like Larnach. So they shouldn't be afraid to move a guy like Henry Mendez or even Kalen Kilpepper, Eduardo Taib in that range of prospects.
Well, I do want to push back on that a little, that we know that they're ambitious to acquire a guy, like a Detmers. They weren't linked to either reliever that they traded for. Those came out of nowhere. That's not that surprising. Those trades kind of just pop up. The Kremer one, nobody cared enough to link that one either. But unless I've missed it, I haven't, seen any concrete reporting that the Twins are in on these guys. The only news that I've seen is, the Alex Call rumor, which we talked about a little bit. Kind of seems like we're wish casting that we're in on them. We don't, unless I missed it, which I very well could have, we don't know that they're in on these guys.
No, there's the only concrete. Hayes made it pretty clear they were going to trade for a right-handed reliever.
Yeah.
That's the closest.
He listed a lot of, the top names. So it's giving Twins fans this lure. Another guy we haven't mentioned, just in terms of a bullpen help as a right-handed pitcher, Oscar Brazaban is a guy that can also throw multiple innings and has been really good. So, there's another name that's out there. Things can change over the last 24 hours. And maybe, I am wish casting a little bit, to be honest, but that's just kind of the excitement of the deadline. Everyone has had these kinds of feelings where it's like, you can get this guy and it could be really exciting and it's plausible because you have a farm system and you're not too far out of the playoffs. So to me at least, it's really intriguing what the Twins could or could not do. And I feel like not a lot of people are talking about that. Talking about, well, they shouldn't buy in the first place because they're not that great of a team. Sure, but at the same time, what fans are going to want you to make a move when you're a game out of a playoff spot, especially when you weren't expected to be in this position when the season started.
Yeah, right. I mean, yes, the Twins aren't that great of a team, but outside of the Rays, really, and maybe the Yankees, neither is anybody else in the AL. Like, all these teams are kind of in the same pot here. They're all going to buy on the edges, and maybe one team will go in farther than the rest, and then it'll push them over the edge. Hopefully, that's the Twins. We'll find out in the next 24 hours. We plan on having a show tomorrow after the deadline to talk about either what did happen or what didn't happen, and we'll break it down from there. But I want to ask, before we log off. So I think we're all under agreement that the Twins are going to trade for another reliever. Like you guys mentioned, Dan Hayes basically already said that's the plan. We heard whether it's true or not, report that they were acquiring the guy from the Astros for Trevor Larnach. So it does seem like they'll trade for another reliever. So I'm going to set the line between now and 5 o'clock tomorrow, over under 1.5 trades. Are you guys taking the over or the under?
I wanted to ask that question, and I was going to say 2.5. So I feel over. I feel like they're going to make about three moves. That's kind of the number. There's going to be a reliever. There's going to be some kind of other pitcher, whether it's starter, reliever, and then there will be a bat. It'll probably be underwhelming, it'd be like a platoon bat, but there will be a bat.
Yeah, they're going to make, I think, a notable move for the pen. So, like I mentioned, Brazaban, him in that kind of realm of relief pitcher, that'll be the quote unquote big move. And then like Insider said, probably a smaller bat, a platoon bat that can help out against right-handed hitting, left-handed pitching, and like a smaller starter, a guy that is in the similar realm as Kremer, maybe a little bit better than Kremer. Just again, depth, and they make those three moves. I think 2.5 is a pretty reasonable line, but I'm just the gut feeling in me is that there's really only going to be 2, so I'm going to set it just under 2.5. But I think there will be multiple moves tomorrow from the Twins, no matter how you view it.
Yeah, I'm going to say there's going to be one for sure, and then I think there's going to be another. So they're going to trade for a reliever, and then I think they'll trade for a bat. I don't think they're going to trade for a starter. I hope I'm wrong because they need a starter, but I think the Kremer move was kind of giving them depth and a piece that they hope they can improve. I don't see another starter coming in. The third trade or the fourth trade, whatever, there could be multiple of these. I do think we'll see at least one player that's on the major league roster, whether that's, Alan Roden, whether that's Trevor Larnach, whether that's, Brian Jeffers or Victor Caratini or Josh Bell. I think they'll trade one of those guys. I'm not sure that will be for, a piece that helps now. I'd like it to be, but I could also see them, trading Josh Bell for some team's 30th best prospect in low A.
I have kind of a follow-up question to that conversation. I do agree. I think they might do like Bell just to replenish prospect capital that they've sent out. But my question is who do we think the best prospect traded tomorrow is? Not, it can give a name or just like a number range. I don't think it's number one. It's not Jenkins, but top what?
I would say somebody in the Brandon Winokur range. So I guess that's 10 to 15 is what I'll say.
Yeah, in that 10 to in the 15 to 20th range, I think. I believe Akbayani was 27th, and Amick was in the late teens. I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but around those level of prospects. I don't think it's going to get higher than wherever Merrick Houston is. Like, I don't think it's going to reach that far, but like Brandon Whitaker, definitely a guy. Even in the 20, if we're going down to the low 20s, Luis Fregosa, a guy at low A. What kind of prospects will get traded. Fregosa is a guy because he's had a really good year at low A this season. Another guy, Gallagher, even could be a guy that gets moved. There's a few. It's really hard to predict what kind of prospects get exactly traded. You're never going to get that 100%. But I think just some of the guys I mentioned, those are most likely the guys that get moved. I can't really predict that. You can never predict that, but just off my gut feeling.
Listen, I'm going to stay a dreamer here. So, little story. I was lucky enough to be blessed with a Champions Club ticket for the Cody Clemens walk-off Grand Slam. And right after the ball went across the fence, Tom Pohlad, who sits in Champions Club, he ran up and down the first row and gave knuckles to all the fans. He's backing up what he's saying. We've already bought twice. He said he wants to be aggressive, and he wants to go all in. So I'm going to say that we're going to go for somebody with control, like I've preached the entire podcast. And I'm going to say that the highest kind of prospect I could see us moving is Caitlin Culpepper.
Yeah, I just want to really quickly, because I would hope Will's right. I really hope it's someone at least in that 5 to 10, just because I have our 2020 top 10 pulled up. Royce Lewis, number 1, Alex Kirilloff, number 2, Larnick, Balazovic, Duran, Jeffers, Kavoko, Wander Javier, Blaine Enlow, Lewis Thorpe. So that was the top 10. And that farm wasn't viewed terribly at the time. You could have traded literally any of them for a 1.5 year of an established, really good player, and the team would have been better off. And we could do that with like every team's farm system in any interval of time. Generally speaking, you should, if you're in a position to do it, you should be trading from like your 5 to 10 to 15. The odds that they're good are just not that high.
Yeah, I think I agree that going back to FalveysMattress point just quickly, it has been stressed, by the Twins beat reporters that, while Pohlad is, hoping that they buy or make a big move or whatever you want to say, like he has been hands off. He's been letting Jeremy Zoll do it, which I think we would all agree is a good thing. We don't want Tom Pohlad making the business decisions, but he certainly, if Zoll's on the fence of acquiring Reed Detmers or somebody like that, Pohlad certainly, could be the tipping point telling him to pull the trigger on that. We do hope to be live tomorrow after the trade deadline, probably 5:30, 6 o'clock. So the deadline will be over by that point. We'll break it all down. Anybody have any parting words before we go and take everything in over the next, 24 hours?
Yeah. Be ready for anything, I think. There's going to be a move made. It might not be the flashiest, but, you should be willing to get rid of prospects. Prospect tucking is one of the worst acts in baseball, I think, from fans in general. So, if you like a certain prospect and they get traded, don't be hurt about it. If your favorite prospect gets moved, it sucks, but you just got to move on. And that's just how it is, especially with prospects just being 50-50 nowadays. So if somebody like a Merrick Houston or Caitlin Culpepper gets moved, it's going to suck, but I wouldn't completely dwell over it, especially if it gets the Twins, a guy like a Detmers.
Yeah, it's better to be the one on that side of a trade than like the Varland. I don't want to complain about the Varland trade, but a lot of people said it was an overpay. But Varland was already a good MLB player. The other two haven't been. And there's 100 trades like that. It's just, you should be trading prospects. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot better to be on this side of it than it was last year where you're, tearing the team apart. So at least we have that going for us. For Troy, FalveysMattress, and Twins Insider, I'm Twins Central. We'll stay tuned and be back tomorrow night for a trade deadline recap. Goodbye, everybody.